what I love about somatics is, there's this yearning. People yearn for wholeness. People yearn for being connected. People yearn for feeling like they belong someplace. None of that is possible without actually also returning to ourselves and returning to our bodies. It remains a good idea or a concept. What's potent about somatics or embodied transformation is it's highly pragmatic, and then it connects us back into some of the most meaningful things in our lives. And then learning new practices that so often either trauma or our social conditions, right, our families, or the social norms and rules we learned to live by didn't teach us. We can relearn boundaries. We can relearn holding complexity. We can relearn navigating contradictions, because that's part of what human life is. We can actually learn and deepen our capacity to love and be loved. I'm Staci Haines, and my definition of belonging is remembering that we are the earth and the stars. Hi.
Staci Haines.
Happy to be here.
Oh my gosh, you are in the studio. I feel like a celebrity is sitting in the studio with me.
You're so funny.
I found your book, The Politics of Trauma, Somatics, Healing, and Social Justice. And I went, what the fuck? I need this author in the studio now.
Voila, you did it.
So I just want to do a little introduction to who you are and to our audience. Over the last 30 years, you are a leading expert in somatics. And I am so excited to explore and have an incredible conversation with you. You have led somatic coaching programs for social movement leaders and trauma survivors. You emphasize practices. This is going to be so important for our audience, especially those in the corporate world, that help create social justice by connecting people with, gasp, their bodies. So for those of you who are tuning in today, if there's one thing you can take away from this conversation, it's about connecting with your body. It is a journey that I certainly had to explore. And I think connecting with your body gives us an opportunity to have a greater sense of realism in the world. So let's just start with the basics.
Yeah.
What is somatics?
What the heck is somatics?
What is it? Yeah.
Most people think I'm saying semantics.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That is hilarious.
It's changed, but 30 years at this, it's much more popularized. I really think through the pandemic and so many things happening online, there was something about like embodiment that just blew up really in the last 5 years. Now it's much, much older than that. And obviously across culture, it's ancient. But in our modern times, given that we have inherited Descartes, and I think therefore I am, as a key tenet of Western culture, coming back to the body is a very, it's a new thing. It's a new thing, and it's kind of blowing up. So I'm glad you're asking me, what is it? Because most people don't really know. Somatics has the Greek root soma, means the living organism in its wholeness. So that means it's going from like, I'm a thinking self housed in some package that I'm trying to take care of, to this is one whole organism that has 300 billion years of evolution behind it, about 300,000 years of Homo sapiens. But this has an intelligence in its wholeness that when we disconnect and just go into our thinking self, we lose a lot. And mostly our thinking self is not making our decisions for us.
I would love for you to repeat that last sentence loudly for the people in the back, please.
Yes. Our thinking self is not really what's making our decisions. Much, much deeper, we might call unconscious. I don't need to use that, but much deeper things are making most of our decisions for us.
I often tell clients things like, let me back up a second here. The two things that we can control this is what I tell my clients. The two things we can control are our breath and the thought after the thought we noticed we thought.
That's lovely. That's lovely. Can I add to your list?
Yes.
Yes, I love that. This is part of somatic practice, is we can rediscover how to live inside of our own skins again. live inside of our own bodies, live inside of our own aliveness. Yeah. It's de-objectifying the body, right? We objectify the earth, we objectify other people, we objectify animals, and we literally objectify our own bodies. And it is creating a lot of havoc that is not good for us collectively.
We are 5 minutes into this conversation and I'm ready to cry. This is bringing up Shireen Daniels' book, Anti-Racist Organization, and she defines anti-racism as the redistribution of power.
Mm-hmm.
When we dissociate,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start crying again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When we dissociate, we are giving away our power because we are disconnecting from our body intelligence.
Yes. Well, and yeah, exactly. We're leaving ourself, right? Here's what I'm going to tell you the things I love about somatics, and then we can dive in so many places. What I love about somatics is, there's this yearning. People yearn for wholeness. People yearn for being connected. People yearn for feeling like they belong someplace. None of that is possible without actually also returning to ourselves and return to our bodies. It remains a good idea or a concept. What's potent about somatics or embodied transformation is it's highly pragmatic, and then it connects us back into some of the most meaningful things in our lives, like purpose, like belonging, like learning how to yearn or long as a positive thing that can be a guide toward what we want in our lives. And then learning new practices that so often either trauma or our social conditions, right, our families, or the social norms and rules we learned to live by didn't teach us. We can relearn boundaries. We can relearn holding complexity. We can relearn navigating contradictions because that's part of what human life is, right? We can actually learn and deepen our capacity to love and be loved, right? Again, not just like as good ideas, those are all great ideas, but we can embody that. We can go from survival strategies and these automatic reactions under pressure to actually ways of being and practices that, to me, what it feels like is let us become actual humans, like skillful humans.
My goodness. You say that you see somatics less as a technique and more of a way to be more skillful human beings.
Yeah.
You talk a little bit about what somatics is not.
Yep.
Let's go there.
So somatics is not, because we've learned such a profoundly objectifying view of the body. I mean,
I cannot even get over this, right? Like, this has never entered my brain.
Isn't it deep? Because we've been soaking in it since any one of us who have been raised in the broader West, I just don't mean the United States, but in like that orientation, it's like the body's an object, the body's a thing.
But all allopathic medicine is that way.
Right.
Like, this is mind-blowing. Yeah. All allopathic medicine views the body
as a thing.
Right. Whereas all homeopathic or indigenous cultures view the body,
or Chinese medicines, or Ayurvedic, exactly, all of it. It's a whole self that's also in relationship. So I'll go to what somatics isn't for a minute,
and even the environment, right? Like the tradition, all of it is a system. Yeah, wow.
Exactly.
Please.
Which even Western science would say that's true now.
Right.
How do we breathe oxygen? Because we have a relationship with plants and trees. How do we drink water? How did it get purified for us? That we are in an environmental system and a relational system because we're social animals. We're not isolatory animals. Like cougars are isolatory animals. They come together, they make some babies, they have their baby, the mama is training the babies, and then she's like, go find your own territory, because cougars need hundreds of miles of territory for one cougar, right? They're isolatory animals. We are social animals. We're packs, we're herds. Like, we like to hang out together. It's terrible for us to be lonely. We torture each other through isolation. Like, we are the belonging animal,
We torture each other through isolation.
So the soma, let me define it, because most people, because of this objectified view of the body, and then also what did Catholicism tell us? The body is a what? Sin. Here's my other thing, and we'll get to this later, but you can control someone's relationship to their body. It's much easier to control them.
Of course.
Someone deeply embodied and connected to aliveness.
Of course.
Much, much harder.
Already 10 minutes ago, I made the connection around capitalism. I made the connection around, right?
Colonization.
Right. Exactly.
Religions, most major monotheistic religions. Exactly. Yeah. But soma, here's soma. Soma is your thinking self, your emotional self, your sensing, like what are my sensations, your sensing self, your ability to take action or not take action, and how to be related. All of that is the soma. It's a different understanding of who we are, rather than the body's not like that add-on to Western psychotherapy. That's not what somatics is. The body isn't like, oh, well, we breathed twice and we did the stretching exercise, and so we're doing somatics. It's actually a paradigm shift that understands. I know, but everyone's doing that now. It makes me really...
I was listening to an Indian from India, a comedian, just over the weekend, and she was making fun of women doing yoga in the Western world. And she said, if you're rushing to your yoga class...
you're not doing yoga.
You're not doing it right.
So exactly. But put capitalism and yoga together. What you got?
You got a lot of money is what you got.
This is the thing.
You got a lot of money is what you got.
Yeah. Capitalism is very flexible. It eats almost anything. I mean, it ate the gay rights movement.
Do you just walk around dropping these one-liners? I mean, Staci.
I just think about things a lot and deeply.
And then you share them, which is incredible.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, plus you're easy to talk with.
I am so blown away by this conversation. Please continue.
So what somatics is not is like adding breath or like paying attention to your body for 2 seconds and then talking about it. That isn't somatics. Okay. It's a paradigm change where we understand that our deepest adaptations, whether it's survival strategies because of trauma or poverty or racism or sexism or transphobia, whether it's survival strategies or it's adaptations by like, who am I supposed to be safe and loved and have a sense of worth, which most of those things are culturally defined, right? All those adaptations, it's not like they're belief systems in our brains. We adapt around these core needs of safety and belonging and worth. And those adaptations live as patterns throughout our entire mind-body. Our tissues carry history. Our tissues hold our adaptations. And then we be that way, we act that way, we think that way, right? How we transform is we transform those patterns through the body, through the emotions, through the thinking, and then we take on new embodied schemas, new embodied ways of being. We're very adaptable. It's very cool. I mean, we're adaptable to horrendous situations, which we should not be adaptable to, but we're very adaptable. We're very changeable. Somatics is understanding that that change happens through the body-mind or through the soma, rather than I'm going to ponder, I'm going to have a couple emotions. That's important too, but it's a different paradigm of understanding how we change.
Do you know who Sri Aurobindo is? Of course you do. He talks about the supramental mind. The supramental mind is, there are many layers of the mind according to Sri Aurobindo and his philosophy. But the supramental mind is, in essence, what Max Planck talked about in the quantum world around the implicate order and the explicate order. And the implicate order is that which houses everything that exists within the cosmos. And the explicate order is that which comes through our consciousness. And then we can, from that consciousness, we begin to bring attention and awareness to some particular thing. And then that thing becomes in our purview, and then you can go down the road of manifestation and all that. But the supramental mind holds the implicate order in essence. And then if we can get our consciousness to that level of the supramental mind, then we can have access to a much greater, deeper understanding of life and meaning of life. I bring all this up because Sri Aurobindo not only wrote many books and was about this incredible philosophy, he was hugely into yoga and about being in the body. And that the body would then influence the understanding of the multidimensionalities of consciousness. And that's what's coming up for me, as you
That makes me so happy.
talk about
The soma. You know, I didn't write this in the book because the book, I really wanted somatics and a social analysis to become inseparable, because there are somatic lineages out there that are very individualistic, and I think they're missing such a wide view of what shapes us and what we embody and then what we enact.
To talk a little bit about that. What are the societies or the communities that are individualistic?
There's kind of 5 main somatic schools in the United States, and I'm not going to, people will know who they are, they can look them up, but they mostly were somatics that, I mean, you know this, there's a lot of Eastern traditions, because somatics is influenced by Eastern traditions, come to the West, they get shattered from a collective orientation into an individualistic orientation. I think this has happened with Buddhism. I think it's happened with yoga we were just talking about. But even in somatics, there was a focus on, let's have somatics serve people's healing, which is awesome, but let's have it fit a Western psychotherapeutic tradition, which mostly just focuses on individual healing, as if an individual could ever be separate from our context or from our network of relationships. Can we heal as individuals? Absolutely. And then we influence things and we are influenced by them. But that individualism did not have a social analysis about oppression or about what are the root causes of trauma. And like, what is it like to be shaped by patriarchy or white supremacy or, It wasn't including all of these wider things that of course get down into our tissues too. I think one of the reasons it's so difficult to end white supremacy, and there's lots of reasons, mostly because it's so tied into capitalism, but it's also because we embody these social norms whether or not we agree with them.
100%.
And then we enact them
100%.
when they're not even our values. And we have to unpack so many things to be free.
I will share this story with you. I think it's relevant for our conversation. Resma Menachem was being interviewed by Krista Tippett on Being. This was during COVID. And I was listening to an interview of the two of them that was sent to me by a friend because he talked about epigenetics, and that's my thing. That's my jam. And I was on my treadmill. I've shared this story on the show before, but I think it's important for you, given our conversation and the direction where we're going. He talks about how bodies of color are constantly juxtaposed against white bodies to be defined and to be validated. And when I heard that, I fell off my treadmill. I started sobbing on the floor because at that moment I realized, holy shit, I have been wanting to be a straight white guy my whole life. And that has been in my DNA. I would go through and look at magazines and see shirtless, ripped guys that are white and be like, one day I want to be that. And I'm like, well, that's going to be a little challenging on lots of levels. I will never be white. Well, I'm half white, but I'll never be fully white. And that's when I really understood the insidious ways in which paradigms of dominance infiltrate the cellular biology.
Exactly. That's a beautiful way to say it. I'll tell you one of my stories. I'm walking down the street. I don't know. I'm like 15. Walking down the street. There's a man walking in this direction. And this is the first time I was conscious of it. No one taught me how to do this, but we were walking kind of along the same line. And what I did, I looked up at him, I looked down, I stepped off the line, and I ceded space, and I ceded visual space. I submitted.
Yeah.
No one taught me how to do that. I totally knew how to do that. Also, I remember walking by whatever group of men were out doing whatever work and getting catcalled. And I remember being so confused emotionally. It's like, am I supposed to feel honored or offended? How am I supposed to feel? Because what I'm supposed to be is, in the male gaze, sexually desirable. So am I supposed to feel offended or happy?
And how did you reconcile that for yourself?
Well, I think then I was just confused because I was like a 13-year-old. Also, why are men catcalling 13-year-olds? You know, makes my head want to explode. But it's the same thing you're saying. It was already in my tissues.
Yeah.
Because we absorb the cultural, economic context that we're in. This is why also, to me, somatics and social justice go together. Like, yes, let's get free. Let's heal from trauma. Let's be able to love and be loved more. Let's know how to have boundaries again. That'd be good, right? And at the same time, if we don't change the broader narratives and systems and structures, it's like that primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention. You know, tertiary prevention is you're pulling bodies out of the river. Primary prevention is you go up and you're like, who's throwing bodies in? Let's stop that. You know, like I want to stop the root causes of trauma. And I think the root causes, most of the root causes of trauma are human created economies and systems.
Staci, you are wanting to address a system that has been designed by those who have addictions to power. And you and I both know, with our understanding of trauma and trauma-induced environments, that addictions are patterns that are neurochemically secreting a hunger to an unmet need.
Mm-hmm.
How in the hell are we as a collective who holds the awareness and the understanding of the importance and criticality of trauma-informed, trauma-aware, trauma-engaged ways of connecting when we are being subjugated continuously to the humiliation and conformity of dissociating from our bodies?
All right, we have so many directions to go in this conversation. I do at some point want to come back to like the wisdom of dissociation, the wisdom of the freeze response. There's so much wisdom in those adaptations.
There, so we can actually give some foundation to our audience, because I think I want to start with the wisdom of dissociation. I talk about the value of compartmentalization all the time.
Totally.
So let's have you take us there.
Okay, what's so cool, like if we keep thinking about this, just even for this podcast, if we all just take on like, this is an organism. I'm an organism that has 3 billion years of evolutionary wisdom behind it.
For those who are just listening, you're touching your body as
I'm touching my whole body whole.
Yeah.
Bottom of the feet. And also we have these amazing abilities to sense. We sense well beyond our physical body. There's so much intelligence inside of our psychobiologies, right? So we adapt. We adapt probably from in utero, right? And we have these core needs we're adapting to. So we're adapting for safety, right? We track for safety. Am I going to be safe? And are the people I've been taught to identify with, are they safe? And I say that very specifically because if we are taught to identify with all beings, we'd be tracking for the safety of all beings. but we're not taught to track for the safety of all beings.
I need you to repeat that, please.
Yeah. If we were taught we have an inherent capacity to track for safety, our own and others, the others is we get taught whose safety am I tracking for? And if we got taught to track for the safety of all beings, we'd be behaving very differently. Yeah. Yeah. We track for loving and being loved and belonging because we're social animals. So we have a deep wiring for like, how do I belong? And then for, you could call it dignity or a sense of worth or like I matter. Right? So that's all in us. We don't have to learn that. It comes with this beautiful organism, this package of our psychobiology. And then we start adapting. And this is why culture gets in us so deeply too, as we're adapting for safety, belonging, and dignity from the get. And let's say someone doesn't have trauma, which is hard to even know because our culture has so much violence in it. Most people have been exposed to some kind of violence or trauma. But let's say someone doesn't have trauma, they still will have all these embodied adaptations because they had to adapt, right? And those adaptations, we call them conditioned tendencies, but those adaptations are in the habits of the tissues, the ways of being, the embodied belief systems, and the ways that we act and relate. Yeah. It's often why if you see a family walking along, they have similar stances. It's so interesting when you start watching people as whole, not just the content of their thoughts or what they say. So then if we are deeply threatened or hurt or violated or, like you said before, shown over and over again, you're supposed to be this thing that's impossible to be.
Yeah.
And you're demeaned inside of that. Oh, all kinds of things happen to us, right? Then we're like there's threat. And then a whole other level of inherited wisdom kicks in, which is fight, flight, freeze, appease, dissociate. We didn't have to learn how to do one of those. I mean, dissociating is amazing to me. How do we learn how to do that? How amazing to like leave. Who's leaving? It's one of my questions. Who's leaving and who comes back? But dissociating is like, I can't run away, so I'm going to take something essential of me away and leave the rest there to get hurt.
At what point do we become a threat to ourselves?
When we get so compartmentalized or so dissociated or so driven by the charge of fight flight that we have lost empathy with ourselves and others, that we can't find a way to like settle and kind of recenter ourselves, that we can't find a set of values that we know are deeply, deeply true for us, then it's like we're just getting batted around by both survival and whatever social norms we're inside of.
When I coach leaders who have been sexually assaulted as a child or gone through the foster care system or been orphaned or been adopted, even if the adoption, their environment was fantastic and nurturing, epigenetically, they're holding the neuroceptivity of the fight, flight, freeze, and all the things that come with that. In fact, Bessel van de Kolk, in his book, The Body Keeps Score, talks about a particular gene, the CD45 gene, that gets turned on when the child is sexually assaulted, and it miscalibrates safety for the duration of their life.
Somatics would say we can turn that back off.
Exactly. And you and I are coming from different angles.
Totally.
You're coming from the somatic world. I'm coming from the cymatics world. Right. So I use tone to work with leaders to neurobiologically shift the neurochemistry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're doing the same thing. We're just using different paths.
Right.
Totally. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about what a leader who has been assaulted, who has their neuroceptivity, and the neuroceptivity is their sense of safety in the world that is hypervigilant. It's
Totally.
total alert mode. It's
right. Or zoning out danger that's right there and not even seeing it. That combination, right?
How do we begin to even start to talk about this for people who are disembodied, dissociated, and really focused on this immobilized state of go, 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 go?
Well, it's so funny because I know we work in different domains, right? We work in different areas, but I work with a lot of leaders too. And I work with a lot of leaders who are working for social and climate justice, going 90 miles an hour, right? Because look at the need. Look at the need and look at what's at stake. It's huge. So why pause? Why rest? Just keep sprinting. That's different than maybe why someone is sprinting inside of tech or inside of a for-profit, but right? You know, we can cut this out if you don't like it, but at some deep level, I think collectively, we know it's like, we're about to kill our planet. Yeah. I think at some level there's running happening in all of us of like, oh my God, we got to run. Or if we can't run, I got to check out. I just think we know like part of the increasing distress, we can give it so many causes and I will probably agree with most of them. But I'm also like, we are an organism that is a part of this planet and we know what's at stake. And I think most of we're freaking scared. And what do you do when you're afraid? Run, 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 fight.
Eat donuts.
Yeah, definitely eat donuts, numb out, play video games for 14 hours a day. You know what I mean? And like in some ways, I want to say no bad to any of that because we're just trying to adapt. And on the other hand, given what's at stake, that's why I appreciate what you're doing. It's like, how do we heal? And if we're leaders, how can we hold ourselves accountable to our own healing? And we don't have to be perfect, but accountable to our own healing because we have much bigger ripples than just ourselves. So when I start working with leaders, I always start with like, what do you care about? Like, what do you really deeply care about? And that will be our very first piece of work.
Okay, let's go there. Yeah. So you ask this question and I say the bottom line.
Cool. So the bottom line, like your bottom line or the company's bottom line? The
company's bottom line.
Okay. So like how high would you want the bottom line to get?
As high as it could go. Right now we're at 7.5 billion and I want to get to 20.
Okay, good. And then what will be different about you or your life if it's at 20?
I have no answer to that question, but that's a really fantastic question. I don't know. I would have made my OKR. I would get promoted. I would have an increase in salary, and I'd be able to do more things with my family.
Awesome. Okay, good. So let's just imagine all of that. All of that happened. You made a lot of money, right? All of this happened, and then you have more time with your family. Tell me what it's like then. What's your life like?
Yeah. So you're bringing them back into their bodies in some way.
I'm doing a couple of things. Yes, first we call it blending, which is like, this doesn't work in the soma very well, right? Like if something is contracted in the soma or a kind of embodied, like, let's just call it success is I make the most possible money and have the most possible stuff, right? That's just success as defined by capitalism at this point in history.
Yeah, for sure.
But where there is a contraction, we don't try to pull it apart. We support it in the direction it's going. And I mean, people can even try this, who's listening or who are watching. It's like, contract one hand, try to pry it open and notice what happens in your body. It gets tighter. I hold my breath, all of that. Contract the same hand, support your hand in the direction it's going with just the amount of pressure it'd like. And what happens is we soften. There's a very key principle inside of somatics is blending with places of numbness, dissociation, and contraction, rather trying to make it do something. So all I was doing with your character is I was just blending. I'm like, cool, well, tell me more. What would your life be like then?
So for people in the audience, this is resonance. We've been talking about resonance from the beginning with Sarah Payton. And when we acknowledge what is, when we witness what is, when we name and hold what is, that's the moment that something gets to be released.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what you're talking about.
It is. And it literally, that is how the Soma works. We can embody new ways of being through purposeful practice. And within where the deep things are embodied that want healing, transformation, or more purpose, blending softens the deep patterns inside of the Soma.
Talk a little bit about, I'm a leader, I'm either senior director, vice president, in that tier, manager, senior manager. I'm overburdened and overstressed.
Totally.
I'm on the verge of burnout. I have tremendous anxiety. I have demands above, and I have to people manage below. What can I do daily to start to hold myself in that place of blending?
Yeah. Really trying to be like, which thing do I say? I will answer that question. And I want to say first to that person, you and everyone else in your position across industries is feeling the same way. This is part of the distress of our economic system. So,
Of our
economic system. This is part of the distress. So first of all, I just want to go, it's not you, it's not personal, you're not alone. And also, I'm sorry you're suffering because it's hard. It's hard. So two things. One is I'm going to teach you how to center. Center is a very simple embodied practice that basically shifts from a more hyper alert state to a more coherent and calmed state. If we need to add like contracting and softening and contracting and softening, if someone can't feel themselves, we can do that. But maybe we can do a centering practice sometime in this show.
Why don't we do it right now?
Great. Why don't we do it right now? Okay. So I'm going to invite everyone to uncross your legs. If you want to stand up, you could stand up. I won't do that now. And this is a very simple practice. We're going to like center ourselves in 4 directions. Yeah. If someone at home, if you cannot feel yourself, if you can't sense and feel yourself, it's fine to just contract your fists, hold them for like 3 seconds, and then let them go. And then do it again. And squeeze your arms into the sides of your body, hold it for 3 seconds, and let it go. That brings more conscious sensation and awareness to places we can't feel as much. You can do that with your belly, your legs, all the way down. So I just want to add that. Centering. Here's what we're going to do is we're going to drop from our thinking selves down into our sensing and our feeling selves. And how we do that is just notice the temperatures happening right now in your body. Where are you warmer? Where are you cooler? Then we can notice where there's more tightness or more relaxation in the body, or maybe where there's numbness. But we want to drop from up here to down in here. Right? Temperature, pressure, movement. Those are part of the language of sensation. If you're seated like we are, can you find your weight in the seat? Can you find your feet in your shoes? And because breath is always with us, can you feel the inside of your next breath? Maybe you notice it moving in through your nose and mouth, or maybe you notice the inside of your lungs with your next breath. So the first thing we do in all of this is like start learning how to get more present because sensations are happening in present time. Yeah. Then right down here, belly, just below our belly button is center. cross-culturally, this is called many different things. We're going to call it center. What we'll do inside of centering, and we'll first center in length. Yeah, we'll drop our attention all the way down and then center in length, like we're filling out all the way down to the bottom of our feet. And then we're lengthening up, making space between our vertebrae and filling out into length, right? So often we're occupying just a little small part of ourselves and we feel all cramped and like there's no space, but there's a lot of space if we come back into ourselves. Yeah. So we'll center in length. Inside of that, we talk about centering in dignity. Like, can we center in dignity again? Like my dignity, your dignity, the dignity of all life. That's direction 1. Then we go direction 2, which is let's center in width. So the same idea of the center line's right up here, and we're just going to get wider. Stress, trauma, oppression, we tend to shrink. Yeah. This is an opportunity to let's unfurl again, widen out across your collarbones into your shoulders. Widen across your ribs, your hips, your feet. Widen back out. Right? And obviously we're wider than our physical bodies as well, so spread on back out. Yeah. Instead of width, we talk about it's the relational space. I can let me out. I can let you in. I can have a boundary. But mostly we're kind of living in these ways inside of our own skins that don't let us come into balance and length, balance and depth, width, balance and depth. Depth is what we do next. Backside, inside, front side. And then the 4th direction is centering on who and what you care about. Center on purpose. Yeah. So, yeah, it's beautiful. I would teach that first.
Yeah.
And give some time to help someone come back into themselves and have a purposeful home to come back to and knowing what they care about to come back to. It's a much better state from which to make decisions.
This is really, really wonderful. My question to you is, what do you say, how do you hold the individual who is terrified of being still?
Totally. Mostly I get it. Yeah, and then I go, what's better about moving?
I don't have to feel.
That's awesome. And what is it great to not feel?
I don't actually do this, so I don't know how to answer these questions, but
I can relate to pieces of that. I mean, obviously I know how to be still too, but when I think about times in my life where I needed to sprint, I was mostly running from something very deep in me that I didn't know about yet.
Or that I'm sensing and don't want to know more about.
Exactly.
That actually is me over the weekend. I'll just own that.
Or for those of us who are deeply empathetic, which I actually think our normal state is deep empathy.
Yeah.
I think deep empathy is part of also how we're built. Now, obviously not everyone, but I actually think the majority of us. But that empathy, the level of pain, before I had the capacity to be with not only just the pain in me, but the pain in my world and the pain in others.
Yeah.
Running and going fast seemed like a great idea.
This, oh God, I want to have so many questions. This brings me back to the question I asked you when we were about to get on to the set, which is, how do we hold hope in grief? That's one question I want to ask you. I'm going to give you 2 questions here. So that's one question. And then the other question is, how do you speak to, how do you connect with, how do you engage with? I might be speaking about someone that I might know closely. who doesn't want to work out, but who's challenged about movement.
Oh, just moving one's body.
And being in one's body in a way that will get that body to engage in a physical activity that brings up an awareness that the body exists after being through so much trauma.
I just feel so much compassion. We are so trying to make our way here.
Yeah.
Here's what's so trippy. Mostly what has us bounce, right? Stop something that we really want to do and care about, turn away from something that's actually important to us, not work out. I don't want to say it like that because there's many complicated reasons, but mostly what's happening is we can't tolerate our own sensations, right? And we can't tolerate our own sensations because we went through experiences that were overwhelming to our beings, overwhelming. And the memory of the overwhelm still lives in us, even though it might not be overwhelming anymore. Yeah. So we're doing 3 things in somatics. Yeah. We're growing our somatic awareness so we can be like, oh, that's heat. I can be with that. It's okay. Oh, that's energy running up. Okay, I can be with that. We're growing our capacity. And then over here where we got blown out, we are doing that healing work by supporting it, by going, of course you were blown out. That was impossible. That was impossible for your system and your being to take. So we are blending, we're being with, we're letting it's really energy and impulse that got trapped. We're letting it start to run through the mind body so you don't have to store it anymore. Yeah. It's literally stored in the tissues. It's stored in the cells. We can be so mentally smart about trauma, it will make 5% difference because it is just living. The charges are held here. I mean, I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse. And I remember in my own healing, I was like, there is no way I'm going to start feeling my thighs. No frickin' way. I could barely tolerate it. And then once I built enough resource, enough trust and connection with my practitioner, it was like rage and screaming terror and rage that was stored because that's a healthy response to being sexually abused. But we had to move that through my soma. We had to move that through my body. So I didn't have to hold it for 20 more years.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. How are you doing over there?
It's bringing up some stuff. For sure. I know Sarah Payton and I talk a lot about, Sarah Payton, who's the author of Your Resonant Self, talks a lot about how the first thing to go with trauma is joy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to get so serious.
Yeah.
Survive.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're welcome.
Where do we hold self-worth in our bodies?
You know, it's so interesting. I think at this point, I mean, I'm 30 years in now to somatics. And I think this very wise mind body is built to be connected to the earth, built to be connected to the stars, built to be connected to other people. And inside of that, have a really deep sense of purpose. Like, what are you built for? My guess is one of the things you're built for is doing this podcast. Know what I mean? Is that true?
I like deep conversations.
Perfect. You're built for deep conversations for the public.
Great.
Exactly. And in many ways, thawing back out into our bodies gets us deeply reconnected with that purpose. And thawing back into our bodies also has us often confront the things that most deeply hurt us and most deeply disconnected us from life. There's a principle inside of Aikido. So Aikido is a Japanese-based martial art, and it has a lot of influence in the lineage of somatics that I'm in.
Where do we hold
self-worth?
Where do we hold self-worth in the body?
Yeah. I think there's some inherent things that come along with this organism. One, that we're collective, we're built for belonging. I think we have a very deep connection with the earth, like earth as home, earth as interdependent. I think we have a very deep connection with the stars. I mean, yeah. And then we get all clogged up. We get all clogged up with like hurt, with people telling us that these deep senses, like, that's dumb, that's not true. I mean, how many people have told me animals don't have feelings? I knew animals had feelings as a kid.
Wait, who says that? You can see that animals have feelings.
My parents' entire generation. That cat doesn't have feelings. That dog, I was like, yeah, it does. I'm looking at it right here. But no, I mean, that's how I got trained. Working class white. Totally. Animals don't have feelings. Anyway.
Wow.
I know. So, but the more we thaw back out into our somas, that remembering is there. And that's where I think self-worth lives. We thaw back out and we rest back in, and it's like, oh, right. I just am. And I'm connected to something bigger in both directions. And I'm connected to people.
Our self-worth is held in the stars and in the earth.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is so beautiful.
This is why I cannot separate healing, like embodied transformation, and social change. This is why I cannot separate them. It's why I think of them as all one interconnected fabric. Because what I'd say first is stay awake to the world. I know it's very painful, but stay awake. Don't go pretend someplace. Grow. I don't really care how. Like, develop yourself. Like, whatever it is. If it's coaching, do coaching. If it's therapy, do therapy. If it's plant medicine, go do plant medicine.
So grow internally.
Grow internally.
Not go learn Excel.
No. Don't go learn Excel. Grow, or whatever, learn Excel. Grow your internal capacity as a human being.
Right.
Right? And then what I want to ask everyone is notice what time it is. What I mean by that, what time is it in the world? This is the time we are alive. This is our moment in history. World War II was not our moment in history for most of us. This is our moment in history. In the US, we just went through a second mass wave of civil rights called Black Lives Matter. Make it matter. Let's keep going, right? We are, 1972, they named climate. They named global warming and climate in 1972. Yeah. I was 5. How old were you?
72, I was 1.
Awesome. Okay. This is a world we inherited. So to me, it's just like, look around and be present in our own moment in history and get in. Get in. Get in. There's no corner to go hide in right now. So the 2 ways to get in is get in inside of us and grow and evolve and develop our capacity. One of the questions I like to ask is, toward what future are you willing to leverage your courage? But for reals, toward what future are we willing to leverage our courage? I'm scared too. I'm scared. So grow inside and then get involved in our moment in history. And it can be small. You can be like, I am a part of my community's XYZ. Great. But going along with unbridled capitalism that is funding so many of these genocides, WTF? We are accountable. Who else is accountable? It's us. If you're alive, you're accountable. It's our time. So grow internally, grow your capacity, and then get in the mix, and get in the mix like for life, not for destruction. I feel like those are our options right now. For life, for freedom, for equity, or for destruction.
My last question to you was going to be about your hope, but I think you just named it. I think you just named it so beautifully.
Life-affirming. I'm like, what do I want? A life-affirming future.
Decolonization is possible when we prioritize embodiment.
I would say embodiment is a part of a decolonial project, exactly, because we're decolonizing, we're de-objectifying, and then we're like, oh, right, the earth. I'm a part of the earth.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Interdependence of life. It's like remembering, right? Unpacking that long colonial project of exploitation.
And let's just take the last word, remember. We have members on our body, appendages, and we are re-appendaging, remembering ourselves, literally, figuratively, and metaphorically.
Exactly.
Beautiful. Yep. It has been such an honor to have you on the show, Staci.
It's a delight.
What an incredible conversation. Thank you.
You're so deeply welcome. And also thank you. It's like I can become like this and be this because you have so much space. You have deep questions and you have authentic interest. And that just creates such a beautiful space for conversation. So delighted to meet you. Delighted to be here.
Yeah. Please come back. Let's do it again.
Great.
There's so much more to talk about, I'm sure.
So much more to talk about.
Thank you, Staci.
Thank you.